So the question is, do we really need college?
And that goes into our next topic, talking about education, whether we gamify things or not. Do we still need this sense of college? Being put through a 4-year class or a 6-year, what do I want to say? Like a 6-year term or
6-year prison term.
And for some people that can be right. I mean, for many people it can feel like prison. For other people it's just very stressful because not only do you have to worry about real life things a lot of the times, but also school stuff at the same time, right? And some people have support from their families, some don't though.
But it's crazy because, most of the Western world has, 12 years of schooling already. And then you realize you haven't learned anything, apparently. So then you need another 4 years of schooling. And then, some people go on to get PhDs and masters and doctorates. And actually, I think PhD and doctorates are the same thing.
You can become a doctor. Being a medical doctor, an MD, is separate from a PhD. So.
And so, there's, at that point, you're spending, 2 decades in school?
Yeah.
2 decades. And it's amazing because I actually know people who just literally keep getting masters, one after the other. And I feel like, in talking with some of these people, they're like, I don't know if I could survive in the real world because I've never had to hold down a job. I don't, really want to do the 9 to 5. I'm not really sure I could do the 9 to 5, and it's, not that those are the only types of jobs or the types of times, but kind of having a place where you have to go and produce results, right? Because when you're in school, people still sort of tell you what to do, right? They've gamified the process for you. Here's the 5 courses that you can take next semester if you want to do this major. If you want to only have classes in the morning, here's what's available for you. Like, there's still that structure, as opposed to real life where it's a little bit more fluid. Unless you do want to follow the, get 2.5 kids, white picket fence house, and then you kind of have your goals outlined there. But, school in itself, you're spending all this time and somebody else is telling you what to do, right? Like, you could choose, certainly in college, university, you could choose some things, but you're still choosing from sort of a predetermined set of things.
Right. Like if you get said major, like let's say you want to go into anthropology, there are some subsets of courses that you can pick from, but ideally there's still that one path and you have those sets of courses to choose from. And again, we're talking about, of course, the U.S. North American educational system here. So many other systems of education are very different, especially over in Europe or even Japan.
Yeah, and as Pixel Lily mentions, she only needed 3 years for a bachelor's degree. You can actually do a 3-year bachelor degree here in the United States as well. If you choose the right courses, there's some prerequisites that you have to take at most every university, I think, or college even. So you could do it. It also depends on the major that you have. It depends on the college that you go to. I think the average or the kind of expected term is 4 years, probably just because colleges want to get as much of your money as possible. But we also have, there's also like associate's degrees, which are 2 years usually and stuff like that. And of course there's, I think there's even like one degree things you could learn. It really just depends on, sort of your path. But the point being is that, you have sort of that first 12 years, right? You graduate high school and then you have to, do you have to do more schooling? And I think, certainly the article that we were looking at talks mostly specifically about sort of the more generic 4-year college, as opposed to something that's more niched, like if you went to a vocational school or a vocational college where you are learning an actual trade, an apprenticeship almost, if you will, which tends to actually be less than 4 years typically, but can be also 4 years long. So the question is, sort of this more like well-rounded college degree, even though you still have to major in a specific area, but you still have to take prerequisites required courses in certain other things. Like I went to a school that was secular, but it was also Jewish. Went to Brandeis University, and we actually were required to take courses in non-Western topics, which is interesting because I don't think necessarily any other school would do that. And a lot of the courses that were available were Jewish in nature. So that was, again, will that help me get a career as a graphic designer? Probably not. And sort of like all of these required courses that you need to do at a college, I don't think, at least nowadays, I don't believe they necessarily teach you things that are going to be overly useful to maybe some sort of the trade or the job that you'll want to do later. But I think that they're useful in actually teaching you other things, right? Mm-hmm. I personally think college is more useful in teaching you time management skills, people skills, you self skills, because now you're certainly if you live on campus, you're no longer living with your family. You might, you're kind of in a different environment where I think you may be able to find out more about yourself, but you might also be more stressed out. So there's a lot of interesting things that I think college teaches us more so than the actual material, personally.
Well, and again, we're talking about the U.S. educational system. So, looking at this too, what we're seeing is that many universities are using a more archaic educational system and not really adapting to the modern times. And so they're teaching a lot of things that by the time we graduate in the U.S. from a 4-year university or whatnot, that stuff doesn't apply anymore. I know a lot of the business stuff I was taught back in college, a lot of it I never used because most of it's outdated because of technology. And that's, again, one of the impacts, talking about technology, that we're feeling is from this global economy and from this technological heavy world, is that many things are changing so drastically that some of the things we learn in school don't have a lot of substance anymore. Like, for instance, I took a lot of marketing courses. Do you think they focused in on social media during that time? No. But as soon as I got out, it was expected that I had to know social media. And the thing is that big businesses who are hiring people out of school have expectations of experiences and knowledge that are not being given by the educational institutions. So there is a disconnect between those hiring and the educational institutions that are supposed to be prepping people for said hiring. And so that creates a lot of issues too because of that disconnect. Business is ahead, education is still behind. Now, not all of it is because of the educational institution overall, but because it is hard to change a curriculum that's been set for such a long time. And it could take a long time to introduce the correct curriculum because they understand, many of these people do, many of these departments understand that it's students' time and students' money, and they cannot afford to just kind of randomly throw a curriculum together and go, okay, good luck, this will be great for you, and have it all fall apart. I mean, I've been at universities, I've worked for universities where, they tried introducing something new and it was very much off the cuff. They just tried going for it because, they went, okay, now's the time, we can stay competitive. Because again, educational institutions is a funny name for an educational business. It is a business after all. So they're looking at how can we make money and how can we get more new students who bring in money to come to our university. So if you try to be on the cutting edge, sometimes it blows up in your face. And I've seen many master's programs who try to go to online only, for example, completely fall apart and fail because they didn't have the appropriate systems because, again, they didn't give enough time to the curriculum. So it's a constant ebb and flow. And again, these two situations of the business and the educational institution a lot of times never meet up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I feel like, especially in the U.S., the education system is sorely lacking all around. And I think it's behind most of the other Western world as well. And it is a business. It's like you go to universities and I feel like a big portion of the decision factors, a large factor in the decision of where to go to college has to do with, well, how much financial support can I get?
Oh, yeah.
Or how much is it going to cost me? Or how much, how many loans are we going to take out? That kind of thing. And, you have all of this, quote, free education up and, for the first 12 years. So it's baffling to me, number one, why is it then even more money? Like, why is there then the jump to like an extreme amount of money to actually get more education about what you actually want to maybe study or do? That's weird, right? Like that's just weird to me. Like, I don't understand. Like, you're teaching me all of these things that are actually not that useful. Actually, I think someone in chat, Pixelly brought up a good point. There's an epidemic of kids actually dropping out of high school because they literally don't feel like they get anything from it, and because it's not interesting at all. And she also speaks about, needing to improve the learning system overall, anyways, to fit different groups of people, different groups of people at different stages in their lives as well. And that's true. Like, I know that in my high school there was we had 3 different tracks, right? Like, you could learn math, but you had to did you learn basic math? Did you learn more advanced math? And then AP math? And then we had people who were in a special needs class where they had even more assistance for math, and that was kind of cool because you could learn math at your own pace, in your own sort of way. But I know a lot of other high schools don't have that luxury. They may only have one math teacher, or they have a math teacher that maybe isn't, maybe they majored in English and they don't want to teach math, but there's a shortage of teachers. And so it's very interesting because there is that free education for the first 12 years, but is that really, how useful really is it? And then, okay, well, I want to get more specialized education. Okay, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Okay, and then you still, I don't think, again, if you're not really sure what you want to do, which is another topic for another day, but then, what do you do? Now you're just paying all this other money to learn stuff too that I feel like you should have already learned by now, by that time.
There's also the point to be had that when you're in high school, middle school, elementary school, at least in the US, you're not given a wide array of experience of the world around you and what's really happening. And everything is based off a very strict curriculum, and nothing really deviates a lot of the time. And so all of a sudden now you're told, okay, you're out of high school, go out there, pick the major that you want, but you got to pick it right now. And you're like, but wait a minute, I just got out in this world. I'm still trying to figure out how to get my feet underneath me, let alone trying to figure out whether I want to go into electrical engineering or computer science or AI development or whatever, be a mathematician, be a teacher. All that gets thrown at you. And there are so many kids that rush through this process, go, okay, I'm just going to pick a major, do the classes I need, and then just get the hell out and get a piece of paper. And again, we're not saying college is bad, because you do learn a lot. But there are so many people out there who don't learn the same way. And many people say, hey, that piece of paper I paid for that cost me $40,000 a year or $60,000 or $120,000 a year, I'm not using that degree. And, this article from Entrepreneur actually points out 44 million people right now pay $351 on average every month on student loans. And many of these people are people who are being baristas right now at Starbucks because they can't use their degree, either because they weren't given the right skill set, because again, the educational system and the business system and where the industry was going did not mesh up, or it was something they didn't want to do but felt they had to do, so they had to jump into a 4-year degree, learn something that they weren't passionate about, and then get out into the real world going, I don't want to do this. Or you get another thing of, there's just so much competition. When computer science really started booming back in the late 90s, everyone wanted to go into computer science. Now a lot of that is curtailing, right? And so now if you try to get a computer science degree, in many respects, there's not a lot you can do with it at times, because everything's going into things like artificial intelligence and IoT and IIoT. So, again, it becomes a little outdated, or you can't use it, or there's high competition. Again, when computer sciences first hit its peak, Everyone was going into the major. Everyone graduated. Everyone was going for the same jobs everywhere. And it was a nightmare for people, and still is in many situations, depending on the major.
I wanted to bring up a good point from Teddy. The question being not that, do we need institutions, but rather how can we light that spark in people that learning and knowledge and research are good tools to have. And I think, a lot of that is actually left on to, or put on our teachers to do, instead of like kind of the overall educational system, but they're just expecting, these teachers who are working a shit ton of hours,
right,
getting paid nothing at all, to actually to light that spark, right? And that's interesting too, because right, the focus, I feel like, certainly in the American system that I've experienced, isn't on wanting to learn and wanting to get better, but it's like, what kind of job do you want to have at the end that makes you the most money? Because I took psychology. And everybody who heard that I was taking psychology courses was like, oh, what are you gonna do? You're gonna be like a janitor? And I'm like, what? They're like, oh, you can't do anything with the psychology degree. So I was like, oh, okay, well, let me see what else I can do, right? And so it's also interesting because instead of, I think, nurturing children from a younger age to say, hey, what sparks you, right? Like, what interests you? What's your passion? What do you want to get better at? What's your calling? They're just like, okay, you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut if you can have it, maybe. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what else, but doctor and lawyer for sure. And then I guess an accountant nowadays. And then, you'll have, your future is set. So go into those fields. Oh, you like the arts? Oh, you like the sciences, like all sort of stuff. It's like not as like I never really heard a push for it. It was always kind of like, oh, well, that's like a nice hobby. You go to school and you get yourself like a good degree that's going to get you a bajillion thousands of dollars afterwards. And that sucks. I think that's stupid. Because, yeah, I think it's the passion for, like, learning and wanting to better yourself and also doing something that you love doing that's going to be easier for you as a person. Because now you're not trying to just do something because it'll get you a lot of money and you'll be miserable for the rest of your life. But also, lots of people say, like, you can't compare yourself to other people. Your experience is different than anybody else's. And the only thing that you can really compare yourself with is yourself from yesterday,
Right, exactly right. And by the way, I just wanted to throw up the number here. So, as we mentioned too, 44 million now pay around $351 on average every month. So if you look at everyone per month, there are 44 million people right now in the U.S. that are paying a total of over $15 billion per month. Per month, $15 billion per month for education.
That would take care of our debt, right? I think.
We're in the trillions. We're in the trillions.
Oh,
so
we?
Yeah,
that's
just a small percentage. That's a small percentage of the total debt that the U.S. owes. But that's a whole other story. So, 15 billion, and the interesting thing is that our educational system is becoming more of a business. Again, people are not making more money per year. We saw a little bit of an increase over time here and there, but for the most part, it's been fairly static since, I would say, since our parents, again, we're in our 30s, so since our parents were out of college, not a lot has changed in the sense of minimum wage or anything like that. And so what we're seeing is an increase in educational costs with a static income level in the U.S. So how are we supposed to afford that? And we all go into debt for that. So the thing is, if you're not comfortable with what subject you want to take on and you feel like you're going to take that on for the rest of your life or you're not passionate about it, really what this article points out is buyer beware then. Don't rush yourself into it. Don't let standards get in the way because honestly, it will cost you a lot of money and it could hurt you. You could potentially learn in other methods, like we mentioned, other online courses, even online. You can go to edX or many of these other platforms and get a degree and have your classes specifically niche to that one area that you want to focus in on. Now, if you want to become a more well-rounded person, there's an argument to that too, right? Take some other courses, expand your horizons. Maybe you might find new interests. But again, it's like, well, then education either needs to be more affordable, or we need to start thinking about these other platforms and how to utilize them for our educational needs to expand our horizons, expand our knowledge base and our skills. So that way we can then put it back into the world.
Now, knowing what you know now, would you still have gone to college?
I think for the time, because when I went to college, there weren't a lot of the online options. And I mean, even educational systems were still trying to figure out a way of bringing things online as well. And at the time, the system just wasn't really there. So, I mean, for the time, am I glad I went? Yes. But did I learn what I wanted to learn? No. Did I learn the skills that I absolutely needed for the specific niche I wanted to go into? Not really. I mean, really, the education I learned was based on the opportunities I took while in college. So the clubs that I joined, the people that I connected with, the extracurricular activities overall that I engaged myself with, that's what I really learned from. I mean, my degrees are in marketing as well as communications with a focus on performance and directing. So what did I do? I worked for a traveling Shakespeare company on the side. I also became a student representative for the theater and for the communications department. So that way I could actually help out fellow students, get their voices heard, as well as understand the process and how to build a curriculum from the professors. So I had that inside knowledge and was able to piece it together. And that really helped me understand not only where our educational system is and what people want, but how things get structured and how things get put together, project management overall. So a lot of those skills I learned because I was in college. So it wasn't because of the classes, but the opportunities that were open because I happened to be at a university, if that makes sense. So it was everything from the extracurricular point of view. And then there was also the fact that it just forced me to engage with people. It forced me to understand project management as well as product management, but project management. And it made me understand a lot about myself. It really pushed me to extremes. And so, there were certain things I didn't realize I could do or was capable of. And so, all of a sudden I got this one report, and I can't tell you what the report was about, but I can tell you that it really pushed me to the point where I was like, wow, I did it. And I understood that sense of self-accomplishment without a tangible good, but just the fact that I was able to finish something and at the time retain it and present it to others.
So you got the gold star on that. But you gave yourself the gold star. Right,
exactly. And so, I think in that sense it was worth it, but it isn't for everyone. Absolutely not. And this article actually hits on several entrepreneurs who learned because they were observant. They worked in many different industries. They tried to experience life as much as they could, and they tried to take things in, and they asked questions rather than being too afraid to ask questions. They didn't take their positions for granted, and they took that information and they started a business. And many of these people are now, like the top 100 businesses on Forbes, or from Inc. or something like that. And so, they've done very well. Now, is that the case for everyone? Hell no, it's not. Not in the economy that we're in right now. But is it possible? Yes. Or is it possible to at least find that specific goal of perfection for you? And I don't even really like using the word perfection, so maybe let's erase that word for a second here.
Delete.
But, as Tatiana said, you can't compare yourself to others. You just compare yourself to who you were yesterday. It's in fitness, but it's also in the sense of your everyday accomplishments. Okay, so maybe, like for instance, we do streaming. Maybe we didn't have a great stream yesterday, but you know what? We don't let that hurt us. We don't let that impact us. We learn from it. We go, what went wrong? How do we fix it for future? And how do we grow from that? And then bam, we're here today talking to you streaming, and we're having a great time. We have awesome people in the chat. We have awesome people watching us or listening to us right now on YouTube or Podbean or through a VOD on Twitch. We love this. This is absolutely what we love doing. But again, you learn from it, you grow from it, and you try to figure out how do you evolve. And I think that's the biggest thing for anyone. So not everyone needs the structure of school to do that. Sometimes people are structured enough themselves to be able to push through that. But it's really up to the person. You know, we can't tell you one way or the other, don't go to college, or you better go to college, or you better go to college right after high school. That's on you. You know, and just keep that in mind. And, you know, there are plenty of parents that are starting to understand that a little bit more and go, you know what? Get life underneath you first. You know, even if it's hell, go part-time to a university or go to a 2-year associate's degree first. See if college is for you. See if the major's for you. If not, explore around. See what else you can learn. And again, there are these online opportunities as well for education. And as, you know, again, technology increases and expands ever more, there's going to be more opportunities. Soon you're going to be in a classroom through augmented reality, you know, and you can take a class anywhere without ever having to travel.
And you'll be recorded, and then that data will be sold to corporations, and then...
Boom, there you go. Done and done.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know, overall, I think technology is really helping us in a lot of ways. And I do think that, you know, just like with anything else, you know, to take it with a grain of salt and see what's good for you, see what works. If it doesn't work, listen to your gut, you know. If college feels right, go to college. If college doesn't feel right, don't go to college. Especially nowadays, yeah, like you're saying, like there's so many avenues to get what you need. There's so many educational resources you can find online. There's a lot of things that I think technology also affords us nowadays that was not available, you know, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say too, you know, don't feel bad about having to give yourself a break. Sometimes you have to give yourself a break a little, you know, and cut yourself some slack. Not be so hard on yourself. If you're going, you know, hey, I want to achieve this, but it's just not happening, cut yourself some slack. You know, when it comes to the educational system, if you feel like, you know, a 4-year degree is just not for me or this major isn't for me, that's okay. Cut yourself some slack. Go to another major. It costs more money, but again, if that's what you feel is right, or find something that does work for you based on your financials, based on your desires, and based on what you feel your strengths are. And take time to find your strengths if you need to. Again, don't put so much pressure onto yourself because actually right now, psychologically speaking, health speaking, we are at a point in our society where the technology is evolving faster than we are. And what's happening is that, you know, we're seeing increased situations of anxiety, of depression, and of suicide, especially within college-age students, because they're not giving themselves a break because everything is coming at us all at once. Plus, we have the pressures of past generations being passed on to us, and they just don't fit as well, right? These are hand-me-downs of goals that just don't fit the mold anymore. You're basically saying, hey, try to cram this square peg into this round hole. Good luck. It won't always work. And so you got to figure out what's right for you and what's going to be right for you, because this does impact your life many years down the line. And not even yours, but because everything we do has a societal impact. Everything we do. Never take it for granted on what you do, because there is a societal impact and there is some good that comes out of it. And you do affect other people no matter what. Even if you work at, say, a fast food chain, let's put this out there, or a retail, and you're working face to face with people, guess what? If you're in a shitty mood and people see that, that puts them in a shitty mood. It's just the way it is. It's how it works. And so, you know, ideally, if you try to make their day great, guess what? In return, they're happy. And that makes you happy. That makes your day great. So, but again, it's what you put into it. So give yourself a break. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't try to carry around so much baggage, because our minds can't take it all anyway right now, right? We're past the point of taking in all the information that's being bombarded to us, whether on Twitch, whether in a podcast, articles, the news, if you watch NBC, MSNBC, CNN, your local city affiliate, whatever. There is a ton being bombarded at us. So if you need to take a break, close the blinds, breathe a little bit, listen to some music, shit, do it.
Turn your router off.
Turn your router
Turn
off.
that shit off.
and just focus again. Sometimes you need to do that. That is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength because you know you can't run at full capacity. You have to turn your or otherwise down cycle your computer, right? It can't be running all the time. Otherwise, it's not going to start running properly. And it's going to get bogged down. So you have to reboot it. You have to give it a break. Same thing with your mind. The same thing with you. So that's our tip for the day. If you don't take away anything else from today, by God, give yourself a damn break every once in a while.
I like it.